Our first inductee this afternoon is a multiple U.S. champion and a world champion balloon pilot, and also Nancy Heartsill's husband. He pretty much runs the thing, um, and here to help introduce um, Joe is current um, Hall of Fame member. Doesn't really need much of an introduction. Where is he sitting? Mr. Bill Bussey.
Well, it would take a while to introduce Joe Heartsill with all the things he's accomplished, but I want to tell a couple of little stories. Uh, Way back in 79 or 80, along that time, he and Nancy were traveling across from Colorado back home to San Angelo, and they came through Albuquerque, and they happened to see a balloon. Now, Joe got real interested in that balloon, and he put Nancy on a plane to send her to San Angelo. Now, you have to understand that Joe was a football coach at the time, coach of a six-man flag football team, making $6,500 a year. And Nancy was a nurse making $6,500 a year. So their family income was $13,000. Well, Joe negotiated a hard deal with his balloonist out in Albuquerque and wrote a check for $10,000. And he rushes home to his banker, and the banker said, "You're nuts," but loaned him the money. And the rest pretty much is history. Now, Joe floated around in the air a little while for a few years, and he came to the Great Texas Balloon Race in Longview. I believe it was 1986, something like that. And we have real competition there. We were running Gordon Bennett's and judging Larry Golds and things like this. CNTEs, not just for you younger pilots. The CNT is nothing but a flying, but circumferential navigational trajectory event. Well, Joe did pretty well and would have won the race, his first attempt at a real race, except the winner of the race reported him hitting a tree. And so he was penalized 500 points and lost the win. Well, Joe was pretty upset, the best I remember, and wanted me to fix it, and I couldn't fix it, of course. And he said, "I'm just going to come back and I'm going to beat the guy that reported me," and he did. So the rest is history. Joe has brought on so many people into the great sport of competition ballooning worldwide. He has put the United States on the map as far as competitors. When the foreign competitors look down at the roster and they see the name Heartsill, 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 they would rather take a nail and stick it in their eye. I'm telling you, that means something. That means they just dropped three places in points. They're down three places to start with. And so I think that's pretty remarkable. Now, he can claim things like that I think are wonderful, that he and his son are the first father-son who won first and second in the world championship, the first father and son who have won the United States National Championship, the first father, son, and son who have competed at the United States National Championship. So I tell you what, this guy is pretty good, and he shared it with his family, and his family, and Nancy especially, uh, are part of his success. And he carries along Lucas and Rhett and Kate and Glenn and all these people standing back here. He brings them in and makes them feel good. And of course, he competes fairly well, and No, he's awfully good. So, Joe, it's your time, boy.
Thank you, Dr. Bessie. You just made my speech for me. So, see you later. For those of you that don't know, Dr. Bessie is has 15 world records, I believe it is, in hot air ballooning. He has been a leader of the Great Texas Balloon Race for since the beginning, and has generated, I believe, something near $1.7 million in payout to competition pilots. So, Dr. Bill, you've done a great job. Thank you. Wow, how time flies. I started this journey 45 years ago, and it was just awesome. Nancy and I uh, have competed worldwide, and the excuse me just a second. We've been a great partnership, and Nancy is known worldwide as the best crew chief in the world. Hall of Fame. What other sport can we do that we can take the family, the kids, the grandkids, friends, travel all over the world at 73 years old, almost 74 now. So it's just a wonderful, wonderful sport that we're participating in. Uh, the only regret I have is that I wish I'd been exposed to ballooning sooner. If any of out here in the audience are thinking about getting your balloon license, go get it today. Get it now. Don't let another day pass. It's a wonderful sport and you can enjoy it to a nice, happy older age like me. Uh, and I'd like, at this time, I want to let everybody know that Nancy and I have had a great, great journey. And there's none of this that would have been possible without her. And David Levin, who is also a member of Hall of Fame, said on multiple occasions that Nancy was the best crew chief in the world. And it's impossible for me to accomplish what I've accomplished without Nancy being a team member. And I want to share this Hall of Fame honor with her, and I'd like for her to come up and stand with me. Our journey started 45 years ago. And like Dr. Bussey said, it was a trip by pure accident. We just happened to be traveling through Albuquerque, and it was Fiesta, Albuquerque Balloon Fiesta. And we saw the balloons lifting off, and I said, we've got to check this out. It's, and of course, we were there for a day, and then I just happened to run into a guy that was thinking about selling his balloon. And Dr. Bussey let you know the price, and I didn't even negotiate. He just said 10. I said, what would you take? He had a trailer, he had two fans, radios, balloon. I said, what would you take for everything? And he thought for 4 or 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then he said $10,000. And took me about 3 seconds, and I said, deal. And then Nancy's eyes popped open because she knew we only had $5,000 in the bank account. But I did tell O.W. Winston it was a Raven 77. I did tell him, I said, you may have to hold this check for a few days, maybe a week, but we'll cover it somehow. So we headed home with a new balloon, and, I was anxious to try it out. And in 1979, it was very difficult to find someone to help you to instruct, especially where we lived out in far West Texas. And so, our little flight that we had in Albuquerque was just absolutely beautiful. The winds were nice and calm, 3 to 5 miles an hour. You can steer it anywhere. So I get home and I says, it wasn't that difficult. in Albuquerque. We don't need an instructor. And she says, okay, this is great. Let's do it. So we take the trailer and the balloon down to the little field there at the ranch. And I didn't pay a lot of attention to time or weather. It was about 12 noon, maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And of course, we're used to wind in Texas. The wind was 15 plus to 18. And I decided I'm going to tell you. Well, you can imagine how much of a wreck that turned out to be. Nancy comes walking around with her hands on her hips saying, this is not going to work. So lucky me, I made some calls and finally ran into, a lot of you people know him, finally got contact with Steve Jones. Steve Jones, actually, his family's from right here in Indianola, but he lived in Belton, Texas at the time. So Steve became a great friend and was the perfect instructor for me. He was kind of into competition. In fact, he won a national championship here, maybe two. And he taught me how to compete and how to fly the balloon. And we, for 4 years, I guess it was, we just kind of 5 years, we went to different rallies around. Back in the day, of course, Albuquerque was an annual event, and Greenville, South Carolina had a 200 balloon event, and we traveled to it. And then I told Nancy, I said, let's go on a long road trip. And I found a little balloon race up in Newmarket, Ontario, Canada. And then we took off, and then I discovered, hey, we're going to be passing through Niagara Falls. Wouldn't it be cool to do a flight over Niagara Falls? And Friday the 13th, the night before was a full moon. The weather was absolutely perfect. And we flew from the Canadian side. As I lifted off, there was a Canadian Mountie that had his lights on. I thought he was waving at me, but he was coming very fast. So I waved back as I'm lifting off. And of course, Nancy, I think she had pigtails on at the time. She's out there, he's doing this to her. And she calls on the radio and she says, you better not land back in Canada. So here we go. And luckily, we made it across the Horseshoe Falls. The weather was perfect. We went across the American Falls. I was approaching the International Bridge. The U.S. Customs is on one side, and they're all out waving at me. The Canadian Customs are out waving, or they're looking with binoculars is what they're looking at. And then I started making a descent because, this is a once in a lifetime. Why don't I just go under the bridge? Luckily, I changed my mind at the last minute, and we went over the bridge, down in the 600-foot yards where Superman 2 was found, and landed at the Niagara Falls power grid, which is a lot of electricity there. So that we decided to pack up and head on out since that Mountie was kind of looking for us, and we went on up. And as soon as we checked into our hotel, the Buffalo, New York News, Channel 5 News was on, and it said, they had a picture of a balloon floating across the falls. And I'm like, hey, that looks like us. And it says authorities are looking for a balloonist that did an illegal stunt over the falls. And so we spent an extra 3 or 4 days in Canada before we came back, just to kind of let things cool down.
Yes.
What Nancy and I are really proud of is the fact that Lucas Heartsill, our oldest son, he became Rookie of the Year. Red Heartsill became Rookie of the Year. And Kate Heartsill, our daughter, she's following in Nancy's footsteps. She is wonderful crew of the year. And she even helped Rhett. She was crew chief for Rhett when he won the 2016 World Championships. So the family is doing good. The Heartsill family future looks great. I've got 9 granddaughters here, and they're all just fantastic crew. They run and help and pull the ropes, and maybe even a good pilot coming someday. We'll see. I'd like to thank the selection committee for allowing me to be considered for the Hall of Fame, and I really appreciate that honor, and that's about all I can say. Thank you.
And then this one, I really got a kick out of this. It says, the great competition pilots have, and then it says a lot of trophies, and it's crossed out. A great crew chief to prove it.